June Wilkinson was supposed to be a ballerina. She trained for years, pushed through pain, dreamed of classical stages. Then puberty hit, and her body changed everything. The ballet world rejected her because she didn't fit the shape they wanted. So she found another stage. By 15, she was the youngest topless performer in London. By 18, she was in Playboy. Hollywood tried to turn her into the next Marilyn Monroe. She hated every second of it. In 1964, she quit and told the world exactly why. What she said still surprises people today. June Wilkinson was born on March 27, 1940, in Eastbourne, a seaside town on England's south coast, and the timing could not have been harsher because World War II was tearing across Europe, and Britain was bracing for its darkest days. Her family lived close to the edge. Her father cleaned windows for a living, climbing ladders for small pay, and her mother worked as a seamstress who kept taking extra sewing from neighbors because every bit of money mattered. Still, her mother kept one promise steady through all that pressure. She made sure June could take dance lessons. Late nights, tired hands, needle and thread, all of it so her daughter could keep stepping closer to a dream. So June grew up with music in her ears and discipline in her bones, and by the time she was 12, she was already on a professional stage. She played the fairy godmother in Cinderella, which sounds sweet and simple, but it also hints at how quickly life was about to turn. She trained like a serious student, aiming for classical ballet, repeating positions until they felt natural, pushing through the hard parts because that is what dancers do. Then puberty arrived and changed the rules without asking. Her body developed fast, her curves came in strong, and the ballet world around her did not know what to do with that. In those days, the ideal ballerina look was narrow and almost boyish, and June did not fit the shape they wanted. So the thing she had worked toward began slipping away. By about 14, the truth was too loud to ignore. Ballet was not welcoming her anymore, and it was not about talent. It was about the body she lived in. Years later, she summed it up with a line that stayed stuck in people's minds because it was funny, sharp, and painfully honest at the same time. She said, "Big bosoms and Swan Lake don't go together." Behind that joke was a teenage disappointment that could have broken her, but instead, it pushed her toward a different kind of stage. She shifted into modern dance and tap, where movement could be bigger, where a dancer could be more than a fragile image, and where her body was not treated like a mistake. At home, though, support did not feel simple. Her father did not believe in Hollywood dreams. To him, it sounded like fantasy, and he made that clear. He had spent his life doing hard work for small money, so he could not picture his daughter stepping into a world that seemed built for other people. Yet life has a strange way of sending help from unexpected corners, and in June's case, it came through a teacher. Her dance teacher saw potential that went beyond ballet and beyond Eastbourne. Then came a suggestion that would shock many people now, but it changed everything back then. The teacher urged June to audition for London's Windmill Theatre. The Windmill was famous, and not only for its location in the West End. During the war, it became known for staying open through the Blitz, and the place carried that stubborn legend for years. It was also known for a risky kind of performance that danced around Britain's strict censorship rules. The theater leaned on a legal loophole that treated nudity as art only if the performers stayed still, like statues. So they created tableaux where women posed motionless, and they built acts that used timing, props, and staging to keep the law satisfied while still drawing crowds. In 1957, June was only 15 when she got accepted, and that made her the youngest topless performer there. People called her Baby June, and that nickname tells you exactly how the public framed her. She performed fan dances and posed in those motionless scenes, night after night. And the attention came fast because she was striking, and she stood out in a way that was impossible to ignore. What makes the story even more startling is that her own parents attended one of her performances. Today, that sounds unthinkable, but back then, in that world, it was treated as a path to opportunity, and her family was still a working-class family trying to survive. Maybe they told themselves it was only a stage job. Maybe they told themselves it was temporary. Either way, the wheels were already turning. By 1958, June's name was traveling beyond London, and then came a truly strange twist that pushed her straight into America. An American businessman flew her to New York for something called the Miss Plastic Houseware Contest, which sounds like a joke until you realize it was real. It was basically marketing dressed up like a pageant. Instead of talking about big dreams and world peace, she posed beside plastic containers and kitchen items, like beauty and housewares belonged in the same sentence. It was absurd, but it also worked as a doorway, because once you are in New York, one appearance can become another, and suddenly you are in rooms you never imagined. That is how she ended up on NBC's Today Show, sharing a comedy segment with host Dave Garroway. Morning television in the late 1950s was still finding its limits, still testing what it could do and what it could show, and the idea of a young performer with a windmill background appearing in America's living rooms was shocking for the time. Yet there she was, smiling under bright studio lights, introduced to millions of people who had no idea where she had come from or what it had cost to get there. While that publicity wave rolled on, another door opened through Hollywood itself. Producer Ray Stark noticed her and offered a contract through 7 Arts Productions, a serious company with serious ambitions. It is wild to think about the jump. One moment she is promoting plastic bowls, and the next she is being pulled toward film work and studio meetings. It did not mean she was safe. It did not mean her identity was respected, but it meant she was visible. And in the entertainment world, visibility is oxygen. Then Chicago happened, and in that moment, her life tilted again. Hugh Hefner spotted her while she was touring, and he moved quickly because he knew exactly how to turn attention into a headline. Her Playboy debut in September 1958 did not even lead with her name. It was titled The Bosom, and that choice tells you everything about how she was being sold to the world. Not as June the dancer, not as June the performer, but as a body part with a spotlight. She was not officially a playmate, yet she appeared again and again. And the magazine kept building the same image, even using titles like The Bosom in Hollywood, as if her whole story could fit inside one crude label. As her fame grew, the industry leaned harder into the look it wanted. She began in America as a brunette, and then the studio demanded a transformation. They wanted her platinum blonde because Hollywood loved a certain formula, and the blonde bombshell mold was still the loudest one in the room. So her hair changed, and with it her public image changed too, like a switch had been flipped by someone else's hand. Acting roles followed, including film work around 1960, and even moments where she appeared in projects that slipped around contracts and restrictions. It all kept moving, fast and messy, like a life being pulled forward by forces she did not fully control. At the peak of it, she was everywhere. She later said you could hardly pick up a magazine without seeing her. And it was not just Playboy. It was magazine after magazine, photo after photo. A flood that turned her into a symbol before it let her be a person. Even her measurements became part of the marketing machine, and different studios and publications kept inflating the numbers to make the story more sensational, as if the truth was not enough. Imagine living inside that where people argue over inches like they are facts that matter more than your voice. Over time, the shine started to cut. June looked back and admitted something that sounds quiet, but hits hard. She said she did not know if posing nude hurt her career, and if she could do it again, she would have waited. But she also admitted it gave her an audience. That is the trap, right there. Fame can open doors, while it also locks you into a room. Even people around her could see it. Director John Cassavetes warned her not to coast on her body alone because he believed she had talent. And by January 1964, she was tired of being treated like a spectacle. She spoke about it plainly, saying it turned her into a sex symbol and a freak, and she wanted to prove she was more than a body. And then, tucked inside all this noise, there is a small story that feels almost unreal because it is so gentle compared to everything else. In 1958, during the time Elvis Presley was filming King Creole at Paramount Studios, June crossed his path. She was not in the cast. She was just present in the studio world, visiting, drifting through the parties and connections that surrounded Hollywood. Elvis noticed her, and he invited her to dinner at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel, a place built for polished scenes and famous people. He was 23, she was 18, and the setup sounds like it is heading toward the kind of story everyone expects. Later, in his suite, when things turned more intimate, June stopped him and told him she was a virgin. Those words changed the whole night. Instead of pushing, Elvis stopped. He picked up his guitar, sat her on the bed, and sang to her for around 2 hours. Just singing, just playing, like he was choosing music over conquest. She remembered him as sweet. She said they had dinner again the next day, and he made sure she got to the airport on time. Then their paths never crossed again. And that is what makes it stick, because it is a brief moment where the world paused, where the image fell away, and two people were simply human for a while. In 1958, June Wilkinson finally thought the waiting was over. She signed with 7 Arts Productions and expected real film work to start rolling in, because that is what a contract is supposed to mean. The checks came, steady and safe, but the roles did not. The studio kept circling the same problem and never solved it. They did not know what to do with her look, her presence, or the kind of attention she naturally pulled. So she sat there, paid but stuck, watching a so-called breakthrough turn into a quiet stall. And the gap between promise and reality started to sting. Because she could not afford to disappear, she reached for the one thing that always kept her name alive: a stage. In 1959, she joined Spike Jones and his famous comedy band for the live Spike-taculars, and she played the bold, teasing contrast next to Billy Barty, who became someone she remembered warmly. Night after night, she did the work, smiled on cue, and kept the crowd with her. Yet even there, she noticed strange truths. Spike Jones could be a whirlwind on stage, but offstage, she later said he had no humor at all. That detail says a lot about the time she was in, because she was surrounded by showmanship, but the warmth behind it was not always real. Then came a moment that should have felt like a door opening, but it barely moved. Her first credited film role arrived in 1959, in a western called Thunder in the Sun, with Susan Hayward and Jeff Chandler leading a story about French Basque immigrants carrying grapevines toward California. June was there, but only for a blink. One brief scene, one line, and then the film kept going without her. She carried the frustration like a pebble in her shoe because the studio was still paying her while giving her almost nothing to build with. Later, she laughed with a sharp edge and called it the most expensive single-line 7 Arts ever paid for. And you can hear the tired irony in that. She was not being difficult, She was simply watching time pass, and time is the one thing a rising performer cannot buy back. Right around that same stretch of 1959, another kind of opportunity came near, and it came from the outside. Russ Meyer wanted her in The Immoral Mr. Tease, a low-budget nudist comedy that he believed could shake the rules. He saw what the studio refused to see, that she could be used in a bold new way that would get people talking. June wanted the chance too, because she understood exposure, and she understood momentum. But her contract blocked her from doing outside work without approval, and Seven Arts was never going to sign off on a film like that. So they did what desperate artists often do when the front door is locked. They found a side door. She appeared without credit, hidden in plain sight, and the film could use what it needed while her contract stayed, at least on paper, untouched. Meyer filmed it carefully. Her cameo was designed to keep her anonymous, which meant no face and no clear way to point and say it was her, only a brief glimpse meant to serve the film's idea. People still figured it out anyway, because her figure was famous, and fame has its own kind of fingerprint. Years later, when someone asked how anyone could be sure from such a short moment, she answered with a line that stuck for decades. She said it was like fingerprints, because no two bodies are exactly alike. It was half a joke, yet it also showed how strange her career had become, where even a secret appearance could be recognized by people who had never met her. What she did not get was credit, or extra money, or the kind of respect that usually comes with helping make history. Yet history is exactly what happened. The Immoral Mr. Tease was made on a tiny budget and then exploded into a huge hit on the independent circuit, earning far more than anyone expected and sparking a wave of imitators. It also helped push American cinema into a new era of what could be shown and what could sell. June had stepped into that change quietly, almost like a ghost passing through a doorway, and the world moved behind her without even putting her name on the wall. Still, she kept pushing toward real parts because she wanted to speak on screen, not just exist as an image. By 1960, she landed a bigger speaking role in The Private Lives of Adam and Eve, a strange, bright comedy co-directed by Mickey Rooney. It was packed with names like Mamie Van Doren, Mel Torme, Tuesday Weld, and even Paul Anka showing up, so it felt crowded before a scene even started. June played Saturday as one of the days of the week brought to life in a dreamlike setup, where a modern couple imagines themselves as Adam and Eve and sees familiar people turned into Bible figures. It was odd, it was loud, and she later called it overloaded. Even so, it mattered, because it moved her from pin-up fame into a film where her voice and timing had to carry weight. That same year brought Macumba Love, and the talk around it was even hotter. It included a topless swimming scene filmed on Brazilian beaches, and in 1960, that kind of image could turn a film into a headline. Producer Albert Zugsmith heard about it and wanted to use the buzz, because buzz was the only fuel some projects ever had. June played Sarah, a young wife pulled into a voodoo love triangle, and the film leaned into shock in more than one way, with rituals and brutal moments that made it feel darker than the usual glossy fantasy. Her public nickname and Playboy fame followed her everywhere, but in the middle of that noise, she kept trying to prove she could act, not just pose. In 1961, she stepped into another world entirely, even if the audience barely noticed it. She appeared uncredited in John Cassavetes' Too Late Blues, his first major studio film, a black-and-white drama with Bobby Darin as a jazz pianist fighting for his own kind of truth. June's part was small, but the set was not small in feeling because Cassavetes worked differently. He cared about what was real under the surface. During that film, he pulled her aside and said something that hit deeper than any compliment about looks ever could. He told her she had talent and that she should not dare coast on her body alone. Coming from him, those words carried weight, because he was known for seeing the raw human thing inside a performer. And for June, who had spent years being shaped and reshaped by other people's ideas, it sounded like permission to fight for herself. Soon after, she kept moving through Hollywood, sometimes in tiny parts and sometimes with more spotlight. She had a bit part in Lover Come Back, the polished romantic comedy with Rock Hudson and Doris Day, and she also appeared in the musical Twist All Night, where Louis Prima treated her with respect in a way that surprised people who only saw the image. He even told others not to make dirty jokes around her, as if he wanted the room to stay clean for her sake. When filming ended, he gave her a bracelet with a message calling her a fine lady. And that small gesture mattered, because it said someone saw her as a professional and a person, not just a headline. By 1962, her path took another strange turn. The bellboy and the playgirls came out with a loud marketing line about her figure, but the film itself was a patchwork, built from older German footage and new color scenes added later. What makes that story fascinating is who shot those added scenes. A broke, unknown film school graduate named Francis Ford Coppola was hired to film short sketches to spice the movie up. He was not a legend yet, not even close. He was a young man chasing rent and taking whatever work came. Years later, that detail would feel almost unreal because the same director would go on to make The Godfather. And when June learned that, she was amazed by the swing of fate. It is one of those Hollywood twists that feels made up, except it is true, and it reminds you how many careers begin in places nobody brags about. While films kept coming in uneven waves, June also tried to shape a different image for herself. In 1962, she released a fitness record, June Wilkinson and Her Physical Fitness Formula, giving routines and instructions in her own voice. It was part business and part statement. She was saying, quietly but clearly, that she wanted to be seen as more than a photo, and she wanted a future that did not depend on studios guessing right. Around the same time, she also fought a deeper battle that many actresses never win. Hollywood kept trying to mold her into their idea of Marilyn Monroe, the voice, the walk, the look, the whole packaged illusion. June hated it. She did not want to be a copy of a myth, and the more they tried, the more she felt trapped inside someone else's outline. Then a stage opened that felt more honest. In 1963, she starred in the French farce Pajama Tops, first on tour across America, then on Broadway at the Winter Garden Theater, when the show proved popular enough to earn that move. For her, that was not just a job, it was proof. On stage, you cannot hide behind camera tricks, and you cannot be edited into something you are not. You either hold the room or you do not. After that, she kept working in theater and summer stock, taking on plays and tours that showed range, and even performing for U.S. Army bases, because performing is still performing, and the work still counts. By 1964, the frustration she had been carrying finally found a clear ending. She made The Candidate, a low-budget political satire that was released under several titles, which tells you a lot about how it was being sold. June played Angela Wallace, an English immigrant caught in a romance with an ambitious politician, and even in that setup you can feel the machine trying to turn her into a certain type again. During filming, there was an awkward moment that showed how fake movie heat really is. Ted Knight worried out loud about getting aroused in a bedroom scene. June, already used to the reality of sets, told him the truth. With lights, cameras, crew, and constant instructions, it would be the least romantic thing imaginable. After they shot it, he admitted she was right, and the scene became one more reminder that what the public imagines is almost never what the work actually feels like. Not long after, she made a decision that shocked people who only knew her as an image. Top Secret magazine ran a bold headline that announced she was quitting, and it was not whispered. It was printed for anyone at a newsstand to see. Behind that headline was a statement that cut straight through the glamour. She said modeling had turned her into a sex symbol and a freak. And then she followed that with the real point. She said she had to prove she was something more than a body. It was not a neat, polite exit. It was a rebellion. And it came from years of being reduced to numbers and curves, while her real ambition stayed ignored. Even then, she did not vanish. She changed direction. She appeared in mainstream television, including a role on Batman in 1968, and she worked in theater again, including productions like Come Blow Your Horn, and she guest-starred on shows that reached wider audiences. It was not the kind of fame that screams from magazine covers, but it was steady proof that she could stand in scenes without being treated like a prop. Her private life also pulled her into new circles. She dated Paul Anka for 2 years during the height of his teen idol era, and she had a brief romance with George Harrison, which placed her close to music stardom beyond Hollywood. Yet the bigger turning point came in 1972, when she met Dan Pastorini, the Houston Oilers quarterback who carried both talent and a Playboy reputation. They connected fast, and by 1973, they were married, becoming a couple that cameras loved because it mixed sports shine with screen glamour. A few years later, in March 1976, they welcomed their daughter, Brana Marie Pastorini, and motherhood gave June something that fame never could: a life that was not built on public approval. They even tried to merge their worlds on film. In 1974, they co-starred in The Florida Connection, also known as Weed, a low-budget smuggling story with chases and danger set in Florida swamps. It became a cult curiosity largely because a real celebrity couple played it on screen together. But real life does not follow movie scripts, and after 9 years, the marriage ended in divorce in 1982. After that, June made a choice that shaped the rest of her story. She did not remarry. She chose independence, and she built a life that did not need a spotlight to feel complete. That is where her reinvention became real. In the late 1970s and into the 1980s, she leaned into fitness as a serious business, opening aerobics workout studios across Canada in cities like Toronto, Ottawa, and Montreal. In that world, she became known less for old photos and more for discipline, instruction, and entrepreneurship. It was the kind of respect Hollywood had always made hard for her to earn, and she earned it anyway, on her own terms. Later, she moved again, this time into a role that surprised people who never looked past the surface. She hosted interview programs that focused on directors and film craft, and she also created a fashion history show that traced glamour across thousands of years. Those projects revealed what was always there, that she was curious and sharp and capable of leading a conversation. In 2023, at age 83, she published her autobiography, telling her story with candor and humor, including the parts people had whispered about for years. Recognition kept arriving in strange, late echoes. Playboy ranked her in its 1999 list of the 100 sexiest stars of the century, placing her among famous names, which proved how long her image had lasted in culture. Yet what lasts more than an image is the shape of a life. June Wilkinson passed away on July 21, 2025, in Long Beach, California, at age 85, leaving behind her daughter and her family, and a legacy that cannot be reduced to one label. She lived through the machine, pushed back against it, stepped away when she needed to, and rebuilt herself more than once. When you trace it all from start to finish, the story is not really about being seen. It is about refusing to be defined by what others chose to see.